What's up, everybody?
Let's go.
Welcome to the live episode of the Blitz Angle. I am your host, Ryan Linkletter, and I'm here with Brady Penn. Really excited to finally have our first live stream and, have you guys be a part of the Blitz Angle.
Yes, sir, man. Super excited for the first live here on Twitter/X/Bird app, whatever you want to call it. We're here. We got some viewers ready to talk about the game tonight. Blowout win by the 49ers. Y'all drop any questions, comments. Don't even got to be about the game tonight. And also, if you hear this background music we got, let us know your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, we've been hearing some things about the background music. Let us know if we need to switch it up for future videos. Definitely one of the talking points here at the Blitz Angle. But like we want to get into Monday Night Football, absolute blowout, I'd say. I think the Jets obviously got off to a hotter start than the 49ers. I think the 49ers needed to shake off some rust, but 49ers came through, played better than the Jets throughout the rest of the game, and came out with a win. Brady, what was your analysis on tonight's game?
Well, like you said, it took a little bit for the 49ers to get going, obviously shaking off some rust, especially when some of your key guys just started practicing in Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk. But at one point, 8 straight scoring drives for the San Francisco 49ers. And the scary thing is, like you said, there was rust. They were missing Christian McCaffrey. They were missing first-round pick Ricky Pearsall. We'll see whenever we get to see him. They were missing Dre Greenlaw, and they still put up 30-plus on a top-3 defense from last year, and we're honestly controlling a large majority of the game. The O-line was a question mark coming into the year, and with some new guys, they really played well. Brock Purdy was protected for the most part, and obviously Jordan Mason filling in for Christian McCaffrey ran for over 130 yards, I believe it was. So the O-line stepped up for the 49ers. The D-line, I felt, did a pretty good job getting pressure on Rodgers, and then the coverage unit did well. Garrett Wilson had a little hot stretch there and was getting targeted a lot, but even then, I thought there was a lot to like about the San Francisco 49ers tonight.
Yeah, and going off of that, the 49ers it seemed like they had to get their rhythm back. We have all these guys holding out in training camp. We had the Brandon Ayuk saga, we had the Trent Williams saga, and then, the Ricky Pearsall tragically, he got shot. And, they had a lot of problems heading into this game, and it looked like they were a little sloppy out of the gate. And with the late news of Christian McCaffrey being out, I think they did a pretty good job. Jordan Mason had a monster breakout game. He's going to be a guy that is going to be one of the hot ads on the waiver wire.
That's a Tech legend right there.
Yes, sir. He's going to be a hot ad on the waiver wire for sure. And I don't know. Pete Nova wants to know how long CMC is going to be out. In our opinion, I think it could be a week-to-week thing. So hold your horses maybe on the Jordan Mason waiver wire pickup. Let's see kind of the news we have coming out of this game where McCaffrey's health is. But the 49ers look like the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan cooked up. Brock Purdy played great tonight. He was hitting the guys in stride very well. They utilized their elite weapons. They were missing McCaffrey, obviously, but Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle were huge parts of this game plan, and they basically just ate the Jets alive, and the Jets have a great defense. They obviously could have been better with their touchdown execution. They settled for a lot of field goals. Jake Moody probably pissed a lot of people off tonight in fantasy football.
I had him.
What do you say?
I had him, so.
Yeah, I'm sure every Jake Moody owner is very happy tonight, but if you're playing against them, it's not an easy night. On the Jets side of things, I do think Aaron Rodgers did look a little rusty. The offense obviously got off to a decent start, scored a touchdown in the first quarter, but besides that, they were pretty lethargic and not very inspiring throughout the rest of the game. I think Rodgers was a little off from what we've seen, but we've both have mentioned on this show many times that we don't expect Rodgers to be the Hall of Fame quarterback he was in the past. That he just needs to be average to above average if this Jets team wants to compete this year.
100%. And obviously, it's week one. Effectively, this guy has not played a football game since January of 2023. That last regular season game was a Packer. Only played, the 3 snaps or whatever last season, missed the whole year. He's obviously been going through training camp this year. So I would give Aaron Rodgers some time, and I don't think that this is the performance level that you're going to see from him week to week throughout the year. And this is a pretty good Niners defense. But with all that being said, it did have to be disappointing for Jets Nation to see Aaron Rodgers come out the way he did. I mean, I know they went 3 and out the first drive. Rodgers suffered a pretty bad drop there, and then they fumbled on that second drive. Got going with the third drive. Rodgers threw some really nice throws. The velocity was extra noticeable, and he just started going for Garrett Wilson time after time on that drive. But then 49ers defense adjusted. The Jets offense stagnated, and Rodgers really did nothing for the rest of the game, minus that free play touchdown later in the third quarter to Alan Lazard. So I think that there were some good things to take away for Aaron Rodgers, but for the most part, just as a whole, offensively, not a good night for the New York Jets. And remind me, did you catch on the broadcast who they play next week?
No, I did not. Who do they play?
I'm not sure. I know it's not a divisional game because New England has Seattle, and then Buffalo and Miami play each other.
They do have Nashville, and Mr. First Down actually commented he is hoping that the Jets play like this next week against the Titans. And going off of that, I mean, the Titans got a real defense. We mentioned this on our episode yesterday. I think the Titans might have a sneaky defense over there. Obviously, we saw what happened with Will Levis being a disaster. He was a disaster
of the day of all quarterbacks yesterday.
Yeah, he was a little bit of a disaster, and it'll be interesting to see. I think that might be a defensive battle. The Jets offense might not get going yet, and the Titans could be a sleeper cover pick for this week for sure.
Hey, don't look now, but so obviously the Jets have the Titans this week. They have the Patriots the week after. I just want to pivot here for a second and plug my own team that I thought was going to be garbage. There's a realistic, semi-realistic chance that the Patriots could start 3-0 if they play like they did yesterday.
Okay. Relax.
Listen, I'm not even being a homer, and I kind of hope that they don't start that way because then that's going to encourage them to keep Brissett in the rest of the year. It's going to ruin the draft stock, but legitimately, they play Seattle this week, who obviously did look really good defensively with Mike McDonald, but it was Bo Nix and the Broncos. I'm not saying the Patriots are some high-level offense, but it's a game that you could realistically see them winning, even if you're picking Seattle, which I probably will be. And then if the Jets play like this on offense again, who knows? The Patriots, the one calling card for them is that the defense is really good. So that could be another defensive battle in that game in week 3. But I don't want to jump the gun. I just thought it was interesting because even if they do start 3-0, week 4, they've got these San Francisco 49ers. So just interesting to see for a team that we thought might be terrible. But as far as the Jets go, once again, the defense really, really good. It was kind of weird seeing Sauce Gardner get put on the sideline for quote-unquote non-medical reasons. I don't know what was going
That's
on
some
there.
Bill Belichick stuff right there.
Exactly. I don't know what was going on. We saw CJ Mosley leave for a drive. He ended up being okay and coming back in. I was a little bit disappointed to not see as much Quinnen Williams tonight. But as a whole, I think the Jets did a good job of bending, not breaking. Obviously, he gave up the 4 field goals, but the offense wasn't doing them any favors and was putting them on the field in quick succession. So don't think you can really pin a whole lot of blame on the Jets defense overall. I think that the fault lies with Nathaniel Hackett and the Jets offense tonight.
Yeah. Going off of that, we got 2 fantasy questions in the chat. Mickey Mutters, Blitz sports media employee, mentions that Jordan Mason is 100% worth an ad in fantasy waivers. Bro got every single touch in the backfield. I agree. Someone's going to pick him up in your league. Someone is going to do it. I'm just not completely sold because we don't know how long McCaffrey's out.
And Elijah's out for the year too, so.
Yeah, that's true. And then we got Mark Linkletter. Do we panic on Marvin Harrison Jr.? He stunk this week.
No.
I don't think we're going to panic yet. I know we drafted him in the late 2nd round, and we had high expectations for him for this season. We'll mention tomorrow in our fantasy football episode dropping that it's not time to panic on Marvin Harrison. He's going to get warmed up. He's going to eventually have some spike weeks, I think, but he's also going to kind of ease into that bigger workload. And we saw Greg Dortch take a majority of those targets this week, but I think Harrison Jr. down the stretch will be better. Another one, Brady. Do I start Jacoby Brissett or Joe Burrow next week?
Joe Burrow. You gotta be. Even the Patriots' offensive success yesterday didn't even come from Brissett. He made a couple of nice plays, but it was Ramondre Stevenson holding the load. But I do want to revert back to the Marvin Harrison thing real quick. I saw a tweet earlier today that was really interesting, and I think that a lot of the reason that we didn't see a ton from him was the way that he was schemed up. It was weird. So Marvin Harrison's second half route tree, 4 posts, 4 corners, 3 go routes, 0 slants, 0 comebacks, 0 quick outs. And it was just talking about how the Cardinals need to get him more involved underneath, because obviously Marvin's a guy that can run the entire route tree. He can win down the field, he can win intermediate, and he can win short. But I think that it would do him and the Cardinals both a lot of good to have Kyler kind of find him in rhythm early on and let him get some yard after the catch opportunities.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think going forward, the coaching staff needs to find a better job of getting him the ball and getting him going early on in his career. Um, one more question we got. Mr. First Down wants to know if he's our favorite Titans fan that we have. I mean, I don't know any Titans fans.
I already know a lot of Titans fans either, so
A lot of Titans
at
fans.
least 100%.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. First Down, you might be that guy.
One of my Braves mutuals on Twitter, my boy Leslie Mines. He's probably not even watching this, but you guys can have the 1 and 2 spots. You decide who's where. But
All right. Bad boy CC wants to know thoughts on Caleb Williams going forward. We mentioned this in our last episode. Brady, you want to start?
yeah, so as I said yesterday, I think that Caleb will have a better performance this weekend. I mean, really, to be honest, there's nowhere to go but up for him. But I do expect the Bears to get into the film room, look at things. I will say already, Keenan Allen looked banged up yesterday. I believe he might have left the game. Romo Dunze, he did get an opinion today that his injury will not be serious and he's week to week, but he got banged up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the personnel. But I think that Caleb will regroup and at least statistically have a better game this Sunday against the Texans defense. It'll be a good challenge for him, especially going up against another really good young quarterback in CJ Stroud, who himself is kind of ascending into that elite territory already. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic or early with this, but CJ Stroud, like we like to say, it looks like he's got the juice. But as far as Caleb goes, expect him to have a better game. I'm thinking maybe something like 220 and 2 touchdowns on Sunday. Nothing crazy, but I think definitely a improvement from what we saw yesterday against Tennessee.
Yeah, and I just think Caleb was he looked like he had some nerves going into this game, and he was just very sporadic. What do you say?
How could you not have those nerves with all the hype and pressure that's been put on him from the day he got drafted?
Yeah, I mean, from that is concerning if he actually continues to do that, because obviously if he puts all that pressure on himself, he's never going to be the generational prospect we thought he was going to be coming out of college. But I think Caleb Williams he needs to just stay within himself. Obviously, he's going to have some learning moments, and last week was his welcome to the NFL moment. I think Waldron needs to do a better job of making him feel comfortable early on and get him those throws that get him just going and feel confident. Once he feels confident, I think he will be ready to go and he'll start putting up these big weeks. But until then, Waldron needs to do a better job of actually making him feel that way. I mean, there's nothing he did to encourage me that Waldron is the offensive coordinator of the future for the Bears. He had a horrible game plan against the Titans, and he couldn't get his rookie quarterback going with 2 Pro Bowl and All Pro weapons, and then a 9th overall draft pick. He couldn't get all those guys going. So definitely some concerns there, but they're only going to get better. It can't get much worse than it was last week.
Definitely, and they still got the wins, so that's one thing. If you're the Bears, you got to feel encouraged about playing as bad of a game as you can offensively and still starting off the year 1-0.
Yeah. Mickey Mutters, you think the Bears are going to be able to stop Joe Mixon on the ground Sunday night?
I do, because I think that the Bears have one of the best defenses in the league. I think this will be a top 10 unit, and Joe Mixon's definitely going to get a lot of touches. So at least by volume, he'll probably end up with some decent numbers this game, but I definitely don't expect him to have a 150 rushing yard game as he did last week. I'm thinking maybe a 70 to 80 yard performance for Mixon, because he's a really talented back and it's hard to hold him down. But it also just kind of depends on what kind of game plan the Texans come out with. Obviously, a more run heavy game plan yesterday with CJ throwing on the late downs. He was 9 for 9 on 3rd and 4th down with 2 touchdowns. But I do think that you could see Texans maybe take to the air just a little bit more here this week and get Diggs and Dell a little bit more involved than they were yesterday. Because even with the 2 touchdowns, Stephon Diggs only had 20-something air yards, didn't really get a whole lot of volume target-wise. So we'll see. I think that they passed the ball a little bit more this week, and I think that the Texans are facing a little bit better defense than the Colts.
Yeah, the Texans are facing a way better defense than the Colts. The Bears have a great defense, and their front seven is no joke. They have some great guys up there. I think they're going to be a lot tougher than the Colts. I think that's for sure. And one of the things that with Joe Mixon, I mean, he had a massive workload this week. That
Yep.
guy's going to be sore heading
Was
into
it
this
30
week.
carries or something?
Yeah,
Six.
he had 33 touches this week. Coming off of 33 touches, the Bears are going to be a physical defense. And I mean, that could be a problem. I think where the Texans have the advantage is obviously that receiving group and their passing game over the Bears. The running game necessarily isn't a great matchup for Joe Mixon. And I think the Bears are going to win that matchup. I think the Bears and the Texans game, honestly, it's about the Bears offense getting the job done. And I think the Bears secondary is going to have to step up and find a way to stop those weapons when the Texans are ahead of schedule and able to scheme up some of those deep, big play balls that we always see from Bobby Slowick cooking up there in Houston. So, of Joe Mixon isn't my biggest concern heading into this week for the Bears. I think the biggest concern is that secondary finding a way to limit those weapons to smaller plays and kind of getting the Texans behind the sticks early. But besides that, I mean, it's going to come down to the offense. That's how the Bears season seems like it's going to fall. It's going to come down to how the offense plays. If the offense steps up, I think they're going to have a great year. I predicted them to win the NFC North. Obviously, with Jordan Love's injury, the Packers are one of these teams that could drop a few games now and might find themselves at best a 7 seed. So if I'm a Lions and Bears fan, I'm very encouraged about my team going forward, and especially any division opponent facing the Packers while Jordan Love is out has a major advantage going forward.
It just shows you how much things can change in the NFL in a very quick span of time. Because 4 days ago, we're filming our prediction episode, both of us having the Packers going to the Super Bowl. All of a sudden, Jordan Love gets injured on a Friday night. Bears defense looks ferocious. The Lions come out with a huge statement win on Sunday Night Football. And the landscape of the NFC North might be changing pretty quick. I mean, even the Vikings look really good yesterday. Granted, it was the New York Giants, so we'll see. But it'll be interesting. And then with the Bears defending the pass against C.J. Stroud, they've obviously got really good secondary personnel. Jalen Johnson had another great game yesterday against the Titans. I don't think he allowed a catch. And I just want to segue that into shouting at another young corner that we talked about yesterday, Christian Gonzalez. I know I mentioned it just off the top of my head, the matchups that he's drawn. Listen to Christian Gonzalez NFL matchups so far in his career. Jamar Chase, 20 routes, 3 catches for 15. Garrett Wilson, 23 routes, 3 catches for 18. Tyreek Hill, 17 routes, catchless, and an interception. Jalen Waddle, 4 routes, a catch for 15. Devontae Smith, 11 routes, 2 catches for 22 and 2 PBUs. And then A.J. Brown, 19 routes, 4 catches for 46 yards. Like, this dude is a bona fide star at the cornerback position for the New England Patriots. And obviously we know Bill Belichick, when he was here, did nothing but develop cornerbacks year after year in New England. And it looks like he might have developed another one on his way out in Christian Gonzalez.
That is definitely a take. Bad Boy CC actually wants to know your hottest take in 2024.
And I'm going with the Jaguars, man. I had the Jaguars as a 4 or 5 win team. And, I will say Trevor Lawrence had one really crazy throw yesterday where he threw Brian Thomas open in the back left corner of the end zone. And honestly, the Jaguars probably win that game if Javon Holland doesn't punch that ball out from Travis Etienne to swing the momentum. But at this point, I do think the Jags have a talented team. I have some doubts about Doug Peterson, and I already put it out there that I've got the Jags as the last place 4 or 5 win team, so I'm sticking to it. That's my hot take. They've got talent. Brian Thomas obviously looks like he's going to be really good, but Jags, that's my hot take.
Now, Mr. First Down is back with this one right here. Darnold must have called Ghostbusters because he ain't afraid of no ghosts anymore. You know why Darnold's not afraid of ghosts anymore? Because he has a great coach. Kevin O'Connell can work wonders. I mean, I think some of my friends, Chris Aceves in particular, could play a solid quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings based off of Kevin O'Connell's play calling ability. I mean, what he does to quarterbacks is really special. We saw with Jaron Hall, we saw with Nick Mullins, and we saw with Josh Dobbs last year. All of those guys had crazy weeks, and we're like, wow, these guys actually can play football. And then they'd have games where they throw 4 touchdowns, 3 picks, 300 yards. And I mean, Darnold's going to have a crazy season like that. I'm not sure if I'm sold on Sam Darnold at all, but I think Kevin O'Connell's going to keep them spicy this year, and they're going to pull off some wins that I don't think anybody's expecting. And the Vikings could be a sneaky 7 seed. I'm not sure I'll get behind that. Their defense sucks. They played good this week, but they could be a sneaky 7 seed if everything goes right. They have the coaching. I'm a big Kevin O'Connell guy. Big Kevin O'Connell guy going forward.
I don't see them as a playoff team this year or even being on that playoff bubble. But what I will say with Kevin O'Connell and the personnel that they have, if you're a Vikings fan, this has got to make you really excited for next season, if nothing else, because we saw the one game from J.J. McCarthy where he looked really sharp in the preseason. And J.J. McCarthy, obviously, tools-wise, is a more athletic, more gifted quarterback than Sam Darnold, who went out there and looked awesome in the scheme yesterday. So if nothing else, this definitely excites you for the guy that you have set up for the future in J.J. McCarthy. But, I mean, they're 1-0. There's no need to have these thoughts of just looking ahead to next year already. Just wait and see what happens. But like I'm saying, if nothing else, you should be excited for McCarthy.
All right, one more thing. We got Mark Linkletter asking, what rookies stood out to us this week? I'll start with this one. One of the rookies that stood out, all right, this might be a homer pick, but Xavier Worthy, he stood out.
Definitely.
I think a lot of people were concerned just based off of his size alone that he was just going to be a John Ross type player. I think the Chiefs, he landed in the perfect spot. Andy Reid's going to utilize him well, and we saw he's going to be the guy that makes those explosive plays, and he's not going to have the pressure necessarily of being the number one option in the offense. He's right now the number 3 option with Marquise Brown out. When Marquise Brown comes back, he's the number 4. He has time to put on weight. He has time to develop, and he could turn into a deep threat his first 2-3 seasons. Travis Kelce's gone. Marquise Brown's gone. All that's left is Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice and him could be a deadly duo by the time that Xavier Worthy actually develops, and he landed in the perfect spot. And that's one of the guys that I think stood out to me. A rookie that didn't stand out to me and kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I know you're going to talk more about this. Bo Nix, not impressive in Seattle at all. I think he had a great preseason working within the schedule of the offense and getting perfectly scripted throws. We saw against Seattle him just not play the same at all. We saw him get exposed, potentially being the quarterback he is. I know he's young, but Bo Nix has a lot of question marks going forward. Brady, you want to go in a little bit more on Bo Nix's performance against Seattle this week?
Well, definitely. I mean, it was super disappointing if you're a Broncos fan after what you at least thought you saw in the preseason. To me, watching his tape and his games in the preseason, I just saw a lot of elementary level throws, short throws, right at the line of scrimmage, hitches, just free access routes. And I was waiting to see what was going to happen when he got tested and once more exotic looks and disguises started coming his way. And we got our first returns on that yesterday. And the thing that I'm interested to see as the season plays out is which takeaway will be more true at the end of the year. That Bo Nix is bad, or that Mike McDonald is just going to turn the Seahawks into a good defense and keep proving that he's a great defensive mind. I mean, we saw him baller of a DC at Michigan, baller of a DC in Baltimore. Now he's got a chance to turn around a Seahawks defense that many didn't expect to be good, but not a good performance from Bo Nix. We'll see. He's going up against another good defense this week in the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the rookie that stood out to me the most in a positive way was Jared Verse. I know we talked about it last night, the Los Angeles Rams and them trying to replace Aaron Donald and the impact that he has. And we made it clear. There's no singular player that can replace Aaron Donald, maybe 100%. In the history of the NFL. But with the 3 young guys that they have in Fisk, Byron Young, and Jared Verse, perhaps they could get close to that level of production. And it was a huge debut for Jared Verse. He ranked 3rd among all rookies in PFF grade with a 75.5. He had 6 pressures of Jared Goff off the edge, and then he had a 26% pressure rate, which was among the best in the NFL, not just among rookies. So Jared Verse had a monster debut. And the thing is, there were a couple plays where he was matched up on Penei Sewell too. I mean, and that's one of the premier offensive linemen in the NFL. So a lot to like about Jared Verse, and that was who I liked probably the most out of all the rookies this week. I'll also throw in Brian Thomas, who I mentioned earlier. He looked really quick, really shifty, and one thing that I liked from him, this isn't necessarily a talent or on-the-field thing, but he was talking his trash to Jalen Ramsey. His first game in the NFL arguably the best cornerback of the last 7 years, and he's getting up in his face, letting him know, hey, I'm about to cook you. So I like that. I think that Trevor will enjoy Brian Thomas on the outside out there. And even though I don't think the Jaguars are going to be very good this year, I do think that Brian Thomas is going to be.
Yeah, another guy we haven't mentioned yet, Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers, I think, we're not very excited about the Raiders quarterbacks at all. We think that this is the last year they try this experimental quarterback room and they go draft themselves a rookie, depending on where their draft slot is. Obviously, depends on these first 8 games. I think they trade Devontae Adams at the deadline if they struggle through the first 8. If not, they're going to ride it out and get a mid-draft pick. Anyways, Brock Bowers did what he had to in his debut, and I think for him going forward, it's about finding the role in this offense. You have Devontae Adams, you have Jacoby Myers. Where is Brock Bowers going to insert himself going forward if you don't have a great quarterback who's going to air it out a ton? So I think he did what he needed to in week 1. But I think I'm excited to see how he develops this year and his impact on the Raiders long term, not necessarily this season. And then another defensive player that I want to talk about is Dallas Turner. He had an interesting game for the Vikings. He played some decent snaps, not a ton, but he was kind of electric off the edge. He had a fast first step. He was pretty good for them. And I'm kind of interested to see if he's going to make that defense any better long term. All right, heading back to the comments. We got some Mahomes talking here. I know we could go on about this. We got to claim that this is a very anti-Mahomes pod, Brady. What do you have to say about that one?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm the most pro Chiefs or pro Mahomes guy myself. But before I get to me, Ryan is a literal Chiefs fan. So I don't exactly know where that comes from. Patrick Mahomes, I'd be willing to bet, is your favorite football player ever, probably.
Yeah, that's a fair take.
So, yeah, I don't know where that comes from. I know for me, I'll be the first to admit I'm a huge, huge Tom Brady guy. It does drive me crazy when I see the Mahomes GOAT narratives or that, oh, Pat's better than Tom ever was. But at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes already at age of 29 is one of the 4 or 5 best quarterbacks to ever play the game. So just because I'm not going to sit here and bow down and say he's the greatest player to ever play the game of football doesn't mean that this is an anti-Mahomes pod. So,
And going off of that, I'll just say that Patrick Mahomes is just very good at football. I think at this point we're just the expectations of Mahomes being good. We have a high expectation for him. If he has a game like he did on Thursday, it's just Patrick Mahomes didn't have a great game. You look at his.
and it wasn't even a bad game either. It was just
No, he was super efficient, and he just didn't put up 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. So we're like, yeah, whatever. This is an interesting one. How many Super Bowls does Pat need to pass Tom in your mind?
I'm not even going to give it an exact number because let's say that Patrick gets 6, but all of his stats are better than Tom's or whatever. But let's say there's also a scenario. Let's say he gets 7, but they're all kind of middling Super Bowl performances. Because I'm not going to lie. Here's one of the things for me right now is Patrick has his 3 rings. To me, he's still yet to have an elite performance in the Super Bowl. This last one was his most impressive to me, especially with the situation the Chiefs dealt with all year and the run leading up to it. But I mean, Super Bowl 54, he had the lowest passer rating of a Super Bowl MVP ever. He did have 2 interceptions despite the game-winning drive, which is the one thing I'll say. He has always been nails in the clutch. Year before last against the Eagles, super efficient game. Not anything crazy. Did have 3 tutties, sub 200 yards. It was more of an Andy Reid game. I think that's fair to say. I think Patrick controlled the game, got them down the field with quick and intermediate throws. And then this past year, he struggled in the first half, but then second half was nails, especially in that overtime period. He was making the right reads. He brought them back, and he capitalized when the 49ers made mistakes. So to me, I don't think that Patrick has any Super Bowls yet at the level of Super Bowl 51 or Super Bowl 49 or Super Bowl 38. But if he has a couple of those, it can make the conversation more nuanced and more interesting. But for me, as a Brady guy, it's going to be tough to give him that GOAT crown with anything less than 7.
I will go with – I'm going to go with 5. And here's why I'm going to go with 5. and you're going to disagree with me on this. The Chiefs three-peat this season. Okay, he wins one more. He goes on to play 12 more years. He's going to have the passing yards. He's going to have passing touchdowns. He's going to probably have a higher passer rating than Brady did. At that point, 5 rings. He has the three-peat. He wins 2 more MVPs. You're not going to give him the GOAT at 5 if he has the three-peat and that accolades?
5 rings, a three-peat, and 4 MVPs. It'd be a tough conversation to me.
Dude.
As Patrick said himself, and when I say tough conversation, I'm saying like I would have to definitely take a hard look because Mahomes would be pretty equal. Tom had 3 MVPs, the 7 rings. Didn't have a three-peat, just had the back-to-back. Did have 3 straight appearances, but lost one of those to the Eagles. But it'll be a tough conversation. And, at the end of the day, even as people try to be as objective as they can, you're always going to lean towards your favorites. So Chiefs Kingdom, in that situation, they're going to say it's Mahomes. There will be some non-biased parties that say Mahomes. There will be some non-biased parties that say Brady. And then obviously the team Brady is going to say that it's still Tom. And there'll be all kinds of things that go into it. One thing that I also think is I want to see Patrick Mahomes win one without Andy Reid one of these seasons, because I know that was a big prerequisite for Brady for the longest time was, he hasn't won anything without Belichick until he went over to Tampa and did it. So I think it would be interesting to see Patrick win in multiple different schemes, the way that we saw Tom Brady do. But at the end of the day, it's going to be interesting to watch it play out over the next decade. I think Patrick's already locked up the title of the best of his era, more than likely, unless for some reason Josh Allen just explodes and wins a million Super Bowls, which I don't see. But another thing that I'll add is, as Patrick said himself, the kind of thing that tilts it in Brady's favor, even once Mahomes gets close, is Brady having those 2 playoff head-to-head wins over Mahomes in his 40s. And whether that's fair or not, quarterbacks obviously don't face off against each other. When it comes to narratives and things of the sort, these things do matter. And one thing that I've often seen as a rebuttal to that is, I guess Eli Manning's better than Tom Brady. It's different because Eli Manning clearly wasn't on the level of quarterback Tom Brady is. Patrick Mahomes is on that level of all-time great quarterbacks. So once you start breaking it down, comparing the two of them, I feel like head-to-head, fair or not, is something that goes into the conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you can't have the conversation between Mahomes and Brady until he gets that 5th ring. I think when he gets his 4th, he's second best all time.
Yep.
Once he gets 5, he has a strong argument to be the GOAT. And the only reason that you might disagree with me, but if I'm taking a quarterback just for a game, I'm taking Patrick Mahomes just because Patrick Mahomes can do different stuff that Tom Brady can't. And you might disagree with me because Brady's a great quarterback, don't get me wrong, but Brady's not rolling across his body to the right and throwing 30 yards to the other side of the field like Mahomes can. Mahomes has that ability to just do that type of a thing. Brady, intellectually, he's past Mahomes, and I agree with that 100%. I think it'll be interesting to see how Mahomes keeps developing, but he's already an all-time great in that category too. I mean, once he only gets better, I think that conversation is fair, and Mahomes can just do more. That's my biggest thing, is that Mahomes has that extra improvisation ability that Brady necessarily never had. Even Brady was so good in the pocket and just being a controller of the offense and knowing what the defense was doing that he was perfect at what he was doing. But he just was never the guy scrambling around, making plays happen with his improvisation ability. And that's the main reason why I would take Mahomes. That's not even a biased take for me. That's just my personal opinion as to Mahomes having more options with his skill set versus Brady being limited with the pocket ability.
Here's what I would say to that. I agree with you. Patrick can 100% do more physically. Obviously, we weren't ever seeing Tom roll out, crossbody, sidearm throws, this and that. But as you alluded to, for one, the cerebral aspect, it's not even an insult to Mahomes. I don't think that anybody is as good mentally as Tom Brady was pre-snap, game preparation, being in the film room, all of these things. I think Tom Brady was the smartest quarterback. Physically, yes, Mahomes has the abilities, but I think that one thing that Tom had that he is second to none in, like you also mentioned, is that pocket footwork. And while Patrick is the greatest we've ever seen at extending the play, making plays outside the tackle box and keeping things alive until guys can get open and free, Brady was just a master manipulator of the pocket. The footwork, I saw like a 3-minute like compilation the other day of Brady's like pocket footwork and movement. It's just literally beautiful to see, man. So I understand both sides of it. Obviously, the way you're going to take Patrick, I'm going to take Tom and say that it's non-biased, even if I do have bias towards Brady, because at the end of the day, pretty much every time I saw Tom Brady have a big game that he needed to win, he got it done. And the same goes for Patrick. We've seen him. I told you the other day on the pod, he's the only guy that I've seen that comes close to the clutch level of Brady. Like that dude is just gritty when it comes to the end of the game. And, I say this now, you have to be political. You have to be a diplomat and keep Peyton above Mahomes, I feel like, for now.
No,
Because listen. Just because of the longevity, we've seen the complete career. We've seen the 5 MVPs, but
if Mahomes retired today, he would be third all time.
No. Here's the thing. So I have Peyton as my 2 technically right now, but if I'm picking best quarterbacks, Patrick's my number 2. Peyton's my number 3. But in terms of GOAT ranking or whatever, just off the full like longer body of work, I feel like right now you kind of have to put Peyton 2. I'm fine with you putting Mahomes over Montana, even with the one less ring, harder era, more physically talented, all this and that. But I do think that the next ring Patrick gets, maybe even sooner than the next ring, if he doesn't get a ring this year, you can put him above Peyton Manning. But the Sheriff was amazing in his own right. But at the end of the day, it's between Brady and Mahomes to me as the 2 best to ever do it.
Yeah, 100%. The longevity would get Mahomes number 2, even if he doesn't win another ring. All right, let's get off of this conversation. We've yapped enough. We could talk about this for hours.
A whole episode for this.
We really could. The illegal formation penalties this week. Obviously, we've seen it's a very it's the NFL's flag week. We always see in the first week a bunch of penalties just get called that make no sense. And it's highlighted every Thursday night game, the opening game of the year. We saw this last year, and we saw Jawan Taylor basically have 8 penalties in the first game. We saw it this year with the Ravens, and Jawan Taylor again getting a bunch of penalties by having an illegal formation. So a body part of the tackles needs to be lined up with the center's butt. If they're not, then it's going to get called. And we saw this week that obviously it was a point of emphasis, and it's going to get called going forward. I'm not sure if it's going to be as much going forward as it was this week because everybody's watching this week, and I think as a point of emphasis coming into the year, the referees are going to be on it. They might be a little bit more lenient as the season goes, but we saw it really hammered down. And one of the things that looks like might be back is tackles starting early or defensive linemen basically starting over the ball, and those guys aren't getting called. So it's just an interesting thing, a little bit of positioning between offensive linemen and defensive linemen that I think gets worked out eventually.
Yeah, Ronnie Stanley mentioned that he thought the NFL was trying to make an example out of him. And while I don't necessarily agree with that, I do think that the NFL was trying to set a precedent this week and trying to show, I think the more that we see guys get creative in terms of coordinators, the more that we see them try to bend these rules. And it's part of being a great coach. You want to find any single advantage that you can. Shout out Bill Belichick. Shout out Deflategate, the fakest thing ever. You always want to find any little advantage you can. And one thing that these coaches, and especially these O-line coaches, I think, have tried to find is these early starts, these guys playing back and getting more space for their pass sets. And I think the NFL is saying, hey, we're not going for that this year. I heard earlier in the broadcast tonight, Joe Buck say that the illegal formation penalty, I believe, against the Jets was the 22nd illegal formation penalty of week 1, and that last season there were only 10. So the NFL clearly cracking down on that and trying to send a message to all these teams that are trying to get creative and get these little advantages on the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think it's going to be called as much going forward. I think that eventually this gets sorted out and it's not really as big of a deal. But going off of that, we'll talk about our Thursday night preview just a little bit. We'll get into it in the next episode of the Blitz Angle. But we got the Dolphins and Bills. We got some injury concerns. Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert are both injured right now. They might be out for Thursday night. Josh Allen has a hand injury. He might miss Thursday night. So a lot of concerns going forward for both teams, and we could get, a matchup that's just not as exciting as we're expecting. And I mean, if Josh Allen misses, the Dolphins have to be heavy favorites at home in this one.
Well, I think Josh Allen's going to play. I mean, that dude's a bulldog. He's tough. I think it's going to have to be something really serious for him to not play, especially you see the way that dude puts his body on the line. We saw it a couple times yesterday, and I'm sure Bills fans kind of get a little scared with it. But at the end of the day, like I said, the dude's a dog. I think we'll see him play. But with or without Achane, I think that the Dolphins will have a similar attack, which is to go through the air on the Bills because they've got a pretty unproven, untested secondary. We still don't know what Damar Hamlin is. He's the starter now here in year 3 or 4 after obviously what he suffered a couple years ago. He's out there.
He is alive. It's not his clone.
You're right. It is the real Damar Hamlin. You do have
the real Damar Hamlin.
Do have Teron Johnson, who's one of the more underrated DBs in the league to me, but obviously Miami's a team that likes to air it out, and I think that's what we will see. If Allen does play, I do like the Bills to win this game. The Dolphins looked a little bit flat, and it is week 1, and you did have the Tyreek Hill thing, probably a little bit of a distraction before the game. But, I mean, against the Jaguars at home in the warm weather, I mean, it's kind of concerning to only put up, 20 points that they put up because this is usually the time of year where they are that explosive team. And it's week 1, so I won't look into it too much right now. But I do think if Josh Allen plays that I'm rolling with the Bills this week.
Yeah, and I think the Dolphins might have been looking past the Jaguars just a little bit. I think they had this matchup circled on their calendars this year after what happened at the end of last season and the sour taste they had after the Bills won the division and the Dolphins basically choked away that division lead that they had. They could have a good game plan this week, and I think Mike McDaniel definitely is going to come with a good game plan. Although we have our concerns about Tua as a player, I think Mike McDaniel is a good play caller. So I think we'll get more of a better look Dolphins this week. I think we'll get a good matchup going forward. All right. We got some Lions talk that some of the comments want to get to. So we got an interesting Sunday night matchup between the Lions and the Rams. What did you think of that matchup? I know we talked about it a little bit. We'll give you guys a quick rundown on what we thought.
Well, we talked about the Lions in these one-score games earlier this week and how maybe they'll regress a little bit because they were so insanely good in one-score games last year, but maybe not. I mean, this is just a gritty bunch, and you saw they're a old school football team when push comes to shove. We saw them get the ball in overtime. We saw them feed David Montgomery just about every play and say run through a dude's face, and that's what he did. They literally just marched their way down the field running the ball with David Montgomery, who is not even their running back 1. He's probably the best running back 2 in the league, but I mean, that dude, he powered them down the field, and they were able to come from behind late. I know Jared Goff tried to give the game away, and Jared Goff remains the top concern on the offense for me. But another thing that I talked about last night is that the Lions front 7 as a whole impressed me a lot. Obviously, we know what Aiden Hutchinson can do, but last year, a lot of their pass rush and a lot of their production on the front 7 came from Aiden Hutchinson carrying. So if they can get the rest of the guys along here, I know they had Davenport, who's newly acquired, that looked good. They've got DJ Reader. If they can come along, then that will take the Lions defense a long way as a unit that we really are kind of suspect of right now.
Yeah, and I have my concerns about the Lions defense, but we saw them play pretty good against a tough offense. I know their pass rush was pretty dominant against a depleted Rams offensive line, which is a great sign if they're going to – I mean, they're depleted. Yeah, they were facing a BC offensive line, but they did their job. They were really good, and it wasn't just Aiden Hutchinson, who might be a sneaky pick for Defensive Player of the Year if the Lions defense takes some strides. But on the offensive side of the ball, we saw wide receiver Jameson Williams have his breakout game. They have been missing that deep threat that's consistent for them all of last year, and I think if he is consistent and turns into that guy for 17 games this year, it gives the Lions offense another dimension. They didn't even use Amon-Ra St. Brown as much as they had in the past yesterday, or Sam Laporta. but they had Jamison Williams open on a lot of deep balls because all the attention was on those two over the middle. And if they're able to beat people with multiple options in that receiving game, they're going to be a deadly offense to stop, even better than they were last year. So I am a little bit higher on the Lions than I was heading into the season, especially with the Jordan Love injury.
Me too.
On the Rams side of things, I really liked how Matthew Stafford played. I know you're grading that one right now. I think Matthew Stafford had a really good game. He, unfortunately for him, he had no blocking. Puka Nacua goes down early, and then he force feeds Cooper Kupp the whole game. I mean, he played so hard, and I really wanted him just as a football fan to win that game because of how hard he was playing and all the hits he was taking. It just felt like an underdog story, and he just didn't come out on top. But Stafford played a great game, and the Rams didn't look bad on defense the whole second half, and then they were just gassed in overtime. And unfortunately, the Lions got the ball, and the Rams never saw it again.
Yeah, definitely. Like you talked about, Matthew Stafford took a lot of hits. They had 3 offensive linemen leave the game for a unit that was already bottom third in the league last year. They were 21st in pass block win rate last year. Now you have 3 starters go out, and that's going to terrify you if you're Matthew Stafford. I will say, going up against a softer defense this coming week in the Arizona Cardinals, that could be a high-scoring game. Right now, actually, entering the game, Arizona, the spread is Arizona by 1. Obviously, home team gets 3 free points. So on a neutral site, they'd have the Rams by about 2 points. But that just shows that the line makers are probably just as concerned with the offensive line as we are. And then at week 3, they've got the 49ers. After that, they've got the Bears. And obviously, they're going to be without Puka Nacua for at least 3 weeks. So it's going to be really interesting to see what Sean McVay cooks up. Obviously, we've seen him cook up with less than ideal circumstances, weapon-wise and offensive personnel-wise. But for him and Stafford, I mean, the clock is ticking for this Rams team and on the career of Matthew Stafford, and this is a big year for them. While they do have a lot of young guys, in a year or two when Stafford's gone, they're going to have a question mark at the quarterback position, so they're trying to capitalize and win now. And if they've got a really bad offensive line and they're missing Puka Nacua, it's going to be a tough first few weeks where it's crucial for them to get off to a hot start.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to go back to the Lions real quick. With Jordan Love going down, the Bears offense looking like it did this week, you have to feel great.
Yep.
Like, you have to think that this is your division to lose at this point. I know going in that it looked like a pretty tough division with 3 teams that are going to be pretty good at the top of that division. I know the Bears are ascending, but they looked like they had a great roster to start the season. Obviously, the offense didn't pan out week 1. As a Lions fan and a Lions player, you have to feel like if we just do our thing and execute week in and week out, despite their tough schedule this season, they're going to be in a good spot come playoff time, and they should be the division favorite going forward. We're taking our final questions here as we're wrapping this thing up. Drop your questions right down below, and we will answer you guys before we wrap up this episode. The last thing that I want to mention before we close this episode is some Bengals and Chiefs talk. T. Higgins looks like he's out this week.
Again, they already said that he's probably not going to play this Sunday.
It looks likely that he will be out this week. So what are you thinking that happens now that T. Higgins might be ruled out?
I mean, even if T. Higgins was playing, I'm going with the same thing, which is a Chiefs blowout. I think this will be the least close that we've seen a Chiefs-Bengals game since Joe Burrow came into the league. And I think I gave my score prediction earlier to somebody. I said Chiefs 35-16. Obviously, the Chiefs put up, 28, 27 on a
27, yeah.
On a top 5 defense from last year, top 1 defense from last year.
Top 1 defense, yeah.
I do think that they're due for a little bit of regression. Either way, a really good unit. Put up 27. Don't think the Bengals are as strong as the Ravens defensively. And I don't think the Bengals look strong at all offensively yesterday. Only 10 points on the Patriots. And aside from Jamar Chase, nobody really did anything offensively for the Bengals. So, I'm going with the Chiefs in a 3-score game this weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, the T. Higgins news is concerning. Jamar Chase is going to be their only option basically as a weapon right now. And nobody was very impressive in the week 1 game against the Patriots, and that offensive line isn't great either. So not a good look for the Bengals right now. And I mean, you just have to hope that team starts to get healthy and get in a rhythm mid-season to where they can make a run, or it could be a rough year in Cincy and they could be on the outside looking in for the playoff picture. All right, we got our first question in our question segment.
Okay.
More rushing yards this year, Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson?
I'm going to say Lamar has more rushing yards, but Josh Allen has more rushing touchdowns.
I'm going to go Lamar rushing yards, and I think Josh Allen, you're 100% right.
I mean, he already had 2 yesterday, so.
Yeah, and I think that, like, just from a rushing yard standpoint, Allen's not going to get you as many rushing yards. He's basically just a goal line monster, and then if a play breaks down, he scrambles at the last minute. Lamar is taking off. Yeah, and I think Jaden Daniels might actually push Lamar Jackson this year for a rushing crown. Lamar basically scrambled because of how the Chiefs played him. Not every team's going to play him how the Chiefs played him.
Lamar wants less.
Huh?
I said Lamar wants to run less. That was evident last year.
Yeah, he does not want to run as much, and he was only running that much because he wanted that game really badly, and we saw how hard he was playing to try to get that win. And, we'll see what happens going forward, but we really appreciate you guys tuning in to our first ever live episode. We're going to try to do this once a week going forward, see how it goes. What do you say?
So we got 200 plus.
Yes, we did. But we appreciate all you guys that tuned in today to check it out. Make sure you guys go subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to upload this episode there. Drop a comment that you were here when it was live. We'll go through and like that for you guys.
YouTube, TikTok, X, Instagram, all of it. We need all the interaction. We're growing. We want y'all to help bring us up. We're going to bring y'all with us. Come on.
Yes, sir. You early birds, we're going to remember you guys as we grow this thing. But like I said, really appreciate you guys checking in, and we'll catch you guys next time on the Blitz Angle.
Yes, sir. See y'all later.